every
me
time.
laugh. The article about the person that got stuck in the woods, and he was a salesperson. He didn't pick up because he thought it was going to be a spammer. That really threw me off. I was like, you know what? I feel like I should start taking cold calls now. But also, on a more basic level, I feel like in the last 2 years since COVID has happened, so many software companies have popped up. That means so many sales jobs have popped up. So there's cold calling saturation, there's email saturation. So the good is still there, but then it's being shadowed by the not so good. And then the other part of that equation is also maximizing all channels. So yeah, that's why I think it's going to be fun getting into this today.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Likewise.
Let me know what you guys want to do to get started, or what we're doing here. I'm letting you guys just kind of take the lead here.
Let's honestly, that's the vibe for today, right? Let's just keep it chill.
Yeah.
Let's go around the room with introductions.
Before we start, sorry to jump in, just a couple of housekeeping. This is Christina from Genius. Awesome speakers we got here. We just wanted to let you know that the Q&A is open. Feel free to ask your questions. There will be a specific Q&A sections toward the end, but ask away. And without further ado, I'm gonna hand it over to our speakers. Thank you guys and enjoy.
Christine, one just a little quick thing. I messaged you in this, but could you make me a co-host of this just so the screen sharing and stuff works a little bit later?
Yes, I will. I will.
Thank you. Cool.
Jason, you want to start us off?
Let's do it. So we're doing intros. Is that what's going on?
Yeah, let's do intros.
Yeah, perfect. My name's Jason Bay. Most people call me J Bay unless you're my wife. But I'm really passionate about really how do we start conversations with complete strangers that have maybe never met us before, heard of us, or even heard of our company in the case of maybe a startup. So I work with B2B sales reps and teams, mostly selling software, some selling professional services. And these are folks that really love landing big meetings from their cold outbound, but hate having to send hundreds of cold emails that get unresponded to, or in the topic of today, having to make dozens of cold calls and talk to people and just either get constantly rejected or really not know what to say or do to feel really confident about landing meetings over the phone.
Love it. Sam, take us away.
Sounds good. Hi, everybody. I'm Sam. I've been a BDR at Dooley for about 5 months now. For those of you who don't know, Dooley is a platform that aims to kind of streamline CRM updates, particularly with Salesforce. And we make it just a lot easier to update Salesforce, taking the pain out of it. We can get into a little bit more, but I am probably a lot more like all of you than I am Saad and Jason. I cold call quite a bit, and I find cold calling to be hard because it is hard, but it's all transferable skills. It was the first type of prospecting that I learned, and in my opinion, if you can master cold calling and the psychology of why some things work and others don't, you can master any form of outreach. So we're going to be going over kind of the tips and tricks for that as well.
Cool. Hey everyone, my name is Saad Khan. I am the business development manager here at Dooley. I love cold calls. I also started cold calling, and I learned cold calling by selling to lawyers.
Oh,
they're not
rough crowd.
I love lawyers, but they don't love me, or they didn't. So I had to find a lot of ways to just master myself on the phone, master permissions, master opening. That's what it comes down to. I think we're all going to agree that selling is a lot more about psychology than it is about saying the smartest thing ever. So in the last few years, I've scaled. I was the first rep at Clio to help build out the mid-market BDR team. I also scaled after that a company from 1 to 40 BDRs, where I took responsibility for a lot of sales training. And then I'm doing the exact same here at Dooley. I will say all I know is I don't know enough. I'm not here trying to master every sales tactic out there, but what I am trying to do with our team is to master sales frameworks. So hopefully with Jason, looking to get into this further today. Cool. You know what? I'll just continue on with this. Jason, we were talking about this last week, and in your experience, more so than anything else, what are some of the most common mistakes you see salespeople make in cold calls?
Where to start? So I think that, by the way, I have a lot of empathy for anyone that struggles with cold calling because most people don't get taught how to actually do it.
Yeah.
I don't know what your guys' first sales jobs were, but mine was kind of like, here's a script, get after it, dude. You know what I mean? So there wasn't any skill transfer. There was a script and say these specific words. So I think that, like, stepping back, I think one of the biggest mistakes is to not really understand what it is that you're trying to accomplish, and to really think about what it's like being on the receiving end of a cold call. So what's it like when, I decide to pick up this phone, it's an unknown number. What are kind of the things that are going through my head? So I could show you one big mistake that I see, Saad. Do you want me to share, kind of the framework? You want to start digging through it? Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Or
Sure.
should we get into the framework a bit later, or should we just talk about some of the general observations and questions here? Open to anything.
I think it might be good to quickly show the framework, and then we can break down the call, if that's cool with you, just the different
Yeah.
areas that people tend to make mistakes.
200%.
Here, let me do that.
You're the master here, my friend. I'm here to just take a step back and just keep it going.
Well, hey, you're also the host, dude, so I'm trying to vibe with you, dude, too. So
I appreciate
let
it.
me know if you guys want to take this in a different direction. So I kind of look at the call in 3 different areas, and we can just start with the intro.
Mhm,
But there's kind of this intro, hook, and close.
mhm.
And I think where most people make mistakes here is at the very, very beginning, and it's in the first 30 to 60 seconds.
I see where you're going
So
with this.
Sam and Saad, just to kind of have some back and forth with you guys, what do you feel like is going through the prospect's head when they decide to pick up the phone and answer?
Well, can I start?
Go
The
ahead.
first, confusion.
Yeah. Who is this?
Total confusion and probably a little bit of discomfort. I know, like,
Yeah.
I have total, or I used to have before I was really cold calling a lot, total phone anxiety. Like, you're probably a little bit uncomfortable picking up the phone to an unknown number.
How do you get
Yeah.
past that,
So
Sam? Oh, sorry.
yeah, uncomfortable, confusion, you said, all of that kind of stuff is totally relevant. So what we're going to do in the very beginning, this is where most people make mistakes here, is they don't, 1, remove the surprise, and then 2, get the prospect to opt in to the call.
Yeah.
So basically what that ends up sounding like is, hey, Saad, this is Jason with Blissful Prospecting. How are you doing today? I'm doing good. What's up? And then it's like, hey, I run a company called Blissful Prospecting. Again, we work with companies like X, Y, and Z, and we provide sales training, and they've been getting some really good results. And I was calling you to see if we could schedule a time to talk about it. When you're free. What do you got going on tomorrow? So they haven't addressed some of the stuff that Sam, you said, and Saad, you said around who is this? Why are you calling? Another one I would throw in there too that people are maybe thinking is, how long is this going to take?
Yeah.
So if I can do all of those things, which I'll kind of save this part, Saad, let me know if you want to get into the what to do instead. But that's the first part. And then the latter part, I just sort of gave an example, is they drop an elevator pitch in that first 30, 60 seconds. So the entire first part of the call, the biggest mistake you can make is not engaging the person quickly and making the entire first minute of the call all about yourself. And I'll go ahead and just, kind of flip back. But those are the big mistakes that I see folks making.
I love that. Let's unpack that a little bit more. So few things you said in there are very important. Is there's a confusion to it, and then how are we opening, and the actual why behind our openers as well, right? So if we take a step back and really understand what is a cold call is actually, it can be an education piece, ideally, or it could be something to trigger the next ask. But typically what we hear and see a lot of people do, where it kind of goes wrong, where it kind of becomes like word vomit to your prospect and they get a little confused. It's like, we open with this credibility piece that, hey, let me come educate you, or let me just tell you what we do for others. Imagine, and you just said this as well, Jason, is think about how it sounds to you, or how it would sound to you if you were on the receiving end of it. Now imagine this: if randomly on a street, I come up to you and go like, hey, let me educate you. You'd be like, whoa, hey, who are you? Relax. And the why, like, wait, what is going on over here? And if you think about this in branding sense of what a lot of companies want to do as well, that's what they think. They're like, hey, people will buy from us if we go start educating them. Oh, why? Because we're the thought leaders on that. Okay, let's hold on. Are you the thought leaders to the industry, or are you the thought leaders in your own company? So if you're saying education is the final piece, level 3, and education makes me want to buy, then I'm sorry, but for me personally as a buyer, what needs to happen before education is that I need to trust you. But I won't trust you till I don't like you. People, companies, and cold calls tend to go the other way, where it should go this way: the likability, the trust, and the level 3 could be your your next meeting ask. Want to hear your
Yeah.
thoughts on that?
Dude, you some really good points there, because you use the word education, and dude, you're not going to educate someone in a cold call, right? Even if you weren't talking about your company, you're not going to share this insight. Like if I'm talking to you, Sam, I'm not going to blow your mind in like 5 minutes with this insight that I'm going to drop on you. You know what I mean? This is not going to happen. I think that, I don't know, I'm kind of curious what you guys think about likability, because I feel like that gets a really bad rap these days. Can we use profanity on this webinar? Do you guys, we need to keep it censored? What do we,
I'm so okay with it. I'm so okay with it. This is a Dooley and Rev Genius
Yeah,
webinar.
welcome to our
Okay,
sales team.
cool.
We
Run
are
with it,
I
my
just,
friend.
with it.
okay. I like to ask, if I was running the webinar and I was hosting, I would use profanity, but I like to be a little curious about. I feel like people talk a lot of shit about likability in sales. That, oh, you don't need to be liked. I just have never bought anything, nor have my customers bought anything from someone that they didn't like. I'm not saying that you have to come in and be likable and that's the only thing that's important, but there's so much in a cold call. If you sound like a friendly, professional peer, not a subservient to the prospect, but a peer, dude, that's going to buy you so much in a cold call if you just sound like a cool person to talk to.
Yeah. That's so. This is why Sam and I are on this call right now. Sam and I, we used to sell to finance leaders, and we were selling rebate software. People would actually, so there was a running joke. My team, Sam, had 110% show rate versus no show rate. So people would come on our discovery calls, and then by the end of it, we'd leave such a different vibe or energy, whatever you want to call it, that on the next call, they'd be like, hey, you know what?
Yeah.
I need to bring my manager on the call. You're going to love talking to my RevOps person. Not that, oh, we need to buy this. No, they're going to love talking to you. That's all I want. That's all I want. I bought the Secret Lab chair. I used to get ads for it all the time. All the time. I'm a gamer. I have a bad back. Then I joined my old
I was going to ask you if you were a gamer. Yeah.
Yeah. So
it's a gaming chair.
Yeah, I know, right? So I have a really bad back, and I was getting ads for it all the time. Then my old company, my boss had this chair. And I was like, man, Fraser, tell me this. Legend, by the way, Fraser. I was like, Fraser, tell me this. Do you like it? I get ads for it all the time. And this is all he said to me. He was like, do you have a bad back? I was like, yeah. He's like, do you play video games? I'm like, yeah. And then he asked me this. He's like, how many hours do you sleep versus sit? I was like, 5 hours, and I sit like 8 to 10. He's like, do not ask me anything. Just go buy it. I trusted him. I liked him. Best buying decision I've ever made. Now, obviously, B2B deals are a little bit more layered than that. But think about the actual thing that was happening over there, the basis of it.
Yeah. I'm seeing a lot of stuff in the chat too about like making people laugh, making them, and again, this likability piece. Saad and I always, I think I A/B test this, but more often than not, I'll open a cold call by just saying like, hey, kind of tell them who I am, and then say, I know you're probably going to hate me for this, but this is a cold call. I don't like doing it. I know you probably don't like getting them. So like, maybe if you have 30 seconds, we can just knock this out and see if it's of interest. And it gets a laugh at least like 60% of the time. And people are like, okay, all right. Or even Saad does often, this is a cold call, so you can either hang up or roll the dice. What do you think? And it always gets a laugh.
Let me get that out. I actually wrote this down before coming on it. So I actually got this from Josh Braun. And Jason, to your point earlier, your opener a permission-based opener is not your education piece. It's basically like, hey, am I affording time? Do you want to talk to me? So one word I love to use, and it's all over LinkedIn, it's called a pattern disrupt. They know this is a cold call. You know this is a cold call, but what can you do that in that first 5 or 10 seconds you get their attention? For me, and obviously friends, please try it out. Don't hate it till you try it. This is my favorite one. Hey, Jason, you're probably going to hate me because this is a cold call. Would you like to hang up or roll the dice? Saad from Dooley here, by the way. Even for the ones that don't roll the dice, you know what? At the end of it, even if they say no, I don't feel icky about them saying no, because I just know I didn't push something down their throat. And the ones that love it, they really enjoy it. They don't talk about my selling or anything. They're like, hey, you know what? You're a fun person to talk to. What is this about?
Yeah. I love that both of you put your personality into the call where you're not just a freaking robot the entire time. I think with permission-based openers, I like to look at the permission-based opener as a formula, where it's empathize, there's a time ask, and then there's a permission ask. The empathize is you're just saying what you think that is going on in their head. Hey, you're probably going to hate this because it's a cold call, because everyone hates getting cold calls, right? Or, hey, I know I'm catching you in the middle of something. Or if I call people, by the way, Friday afternoons, I find are a really good pickup rate time. Hey, I know I'm getting a hold of you on a Friday afternoon here. And instead of taking a cold call, I imagine that you probably want to get the weekend started early, and then we go into time. Do you have 30 seconds? Do you have a minute? Permission. And then you can let me know if you want to keep chatting. So you can have some fun with that and create your own. The roll of the dice one, if that works for you, use that. But you guys, there's like an endless amount of possibilities of things that you can do using that formula for a permission-based opener. So the whole point there is to break the ice, get the other person talking, and have them opt in to listen to what you're about to say next.
Jason, I love that you said that. And I think it's a great tidbit because Friday afternoon is a hack for cold calling. It is always on fire. That's the best. And I don't know why, but it's the best couple of hours for like, if you're going to pump out a call blitz or a power hour, Friday afternoon.
I'll tell you a story. When we were selling to lawyers, every Thursday at 3:30, my team and I would, we'd get into a good zone of it. It was probably after happy hours and stuff. And then we'd go call till 8 o'clock to our Pacific lawyers. And then we'd go hit King Street in Toronto, where the entire management team and BDR's A's would go party. Then on Friday morning, we'd come back. We'd not be in the best headspace. We'd have lunch served at 12 o'clock. And by 1:30, we'd all get into work. We'd all start dialing, and we'd all probably dial like through 3 or 4 o'clock. Hey, maybe you know what? That's probably the golden hour when your success rates are going up, because that's what's happening for us as well. We were dialing, we were on the phones.
Yeah, I think that, so I love this, like call time is really interesting because think about the conventional sales wisdom says, you know what, Sam, don't make calls on Friday because people are getting the weekend started. They've been burnt out that week. They don't have any energy. And then when Monday, don't make calls on Monday because people are really busy. They're getting the week started. So salespeople have all of these things going in our heads where it's not okay to make calls on Mondays and Fridays. So guess what happens? Your prospects get fewer calls on those days. Mm-hmm. And Friday afternoon, they get fewer calls because the conventional sales wisdom says not to make calls. So if you can make calls during a time where people are least likely to be getting calls from other salespeople, that's a huge win too. So pay really close attention to the data in your sales engagement platform and allow the data to tell you when the pickup rates will be the highest.
Something that we've been,
that time.
Sorry for cutting you off, Jason. Sorry about that.
Oh, go ahead.
Cool.
Very good, man.
Yeah, no, I get excited, so I jump in. So please just let's relax. This is not about you. So, so one of my reps, Jack, I don't know if you're listening to this or not, at our old company, he was maxing out dials, but people weren't picking up. And it became a conversation. Why are Jack's call acceptance rates so low? And I was like, think about what's going on. People don't know who he is. They don't know what he's about to say. So it's not that he's doing something wrong. And then I asked him this. I'm like, look, my meetings end at 1:15, 2:45 or whatever. So instead of calling at the 30 mark or the 10 o'clock mark, call at those 15 mark intervals. Or call 15 minutes before somebody hops online. For example, I start meetings at 9 o'clock, but I'm actually online at 8:30, 8:45. I'm looking at emails. If I get a call, I'm in clear head mode So I'm more open to a cold call, not that I know it's a cold call, and I'm more open to continue a conversation, not that I want to continue the conversation. Why? Logical, psychology. I don't have other things on my brain right now. So it's just, as much as it's about manipulating your own data, also think about your managers and your leaders. What time are they more open? What time are they answering? Think about your day-to-day as well. When are you thinking less? Somebody posted a comment, would this work for exec level as well? Your execs or any execs are human beings. They were AEs one day, they were BDRs one day. So the whole thing about likability here is think about you're talking to human beings. How do people buy? What makes them like something? What makes them open up to something? I think maybe that's a more important thing we should think about versus titles and all that stuff.
Yeah, you can really freak yourself out. I don't know, Sam, if you ever deal with this. I still do. You see someone's LinkedIn profile and you see VP of sales and you're like, oh shit, this person's been doing this for 10 years. Maybe they're not smiling in their picture and you're like, this person might be a jerk. You just start doing all this stuff in your head, but most of it's not true. I don't know if I'm alone in that, but it's a lot of, it's really easy to do that kind of thing.
You are not alone. And I think it's probably the number one habit that I'm trying to break right now, is always leading with curiosity, and never assuming, especially if somebody is a CRO or a VP of sales. It's intimidating. But even just your tone on the phone is going to say so much more than what you're saying. And it's important to, be mindful of that. And also just, I think, I forget who told me this, but it was somebody in at my last job. And they were like, that person is somebody's, like, think about your dad. Your dad might be a businessman or your mom might be a businesswoman. Like, imagine somebody being intimidated by your dad, like cold calling your dad and being intimidated. It seems silly. They're somebody's brother, sister, dad, like they are a person. So if you think about it on a human level and be mindful of that, I think it's a great reminder always.
Sam, but you're also very good at diffusing the confusion on a call, because that's what happens. As soon as you get a cold call, or while the other person is on a cold call, they're never fully bought in. There's a part of them that are a little skeptical or a little defensive. And I don't know, you've been in situations where you've called people and they're like, hey, you know what? I feel like this is probably going to be a good conversation with our sales manager. I'm specifically going back to, so I don't know if people know this, but Sam actually got offered a job to work for a company based on a cold call she had done.
That's cool.
No, a lot of things happen in that moment. It's not just her pitch or her tone. It's probably a combination of a lot of things that I might not be able to talk about. But yeah, Sam, over to you on that.
Honestly, you hear like smile and dial, but it is so true. People match your energy, and you really have to stay positive. I also think there's a couple of different openers that I really like to set the tone. For me, I saw somebody put in the chat earlier that "how are you" is annoying. And I can kind of agree with that. I don't necessarily like it, but for me, that's like, I greet everybody with a "hi, how are you?" Even the cashier at the grocery store, I greet with a "hi, how are you?" So that's how I talk. And there actually is a bit of data, for example, I think it's Gong that says, "how have you been?" is a better opening statement. So that's one of my go-tos. And I think it's great because it's not, especially if you've reached out to them before, it's not deceptive. And it makes them think like, oh, have I talked to this person before? But you have been reaching out. So it's a bit of a pattern disrupt that way. I also think in terms of other ways to like open a call, that's fantastic, especially my ICP is pretty straightforward. I'm looking for sales managers and I basically know who I'm calling into. But if that's not you and you're looking for referrals, a cold call is a great fact-finding mission too. It's awesome. And I think Morgan Ingram has something that he calls Lost in New York, which I was doing without even knowing it, where it's, a fine line of sounding lost, but also, a little bit cautious and saying to maybe a gatekeeper or somebody else, like, I'm working for this company. I am really looking to talk to the person in charge of XYZ. Can you point me in the right direction? I'm just a little bit lost here. And people automatically want to help you. So it's so much about your tone and how you're saying things rather than what exactly you're saying.
Sam, the other one good one you do as well is I don't know if this was particularly, I know you used to do this at the old company as well, is just sounding confident, like, hey, John, I'm calling because Joey asked me to call you. Do you have a couple of seconds to talk? I'm calling from Dooley, by the way.
Totally. It's the same principle that applies to a cold email. When you name drop somebody else in the subject line or in the first line of the email, people are like, their heads turn a little bit. So again, like, not being deceptive with it. If you haven't talked to Joey or whoever it is, then maybe don't use that tactic, because I'm not a huge fan of like deceptive sales tactics, but it's great. And really finding creative ways to, I just think about really how I would respond on a cold call. And I think, again, like, I assume that I'm just like other people, which I think we are a lot more similar than we are different. So you just have to think like, okay, if I was getting this call, like, what would make my head turn? What would make me actually be like, okay, maybe I'll give this a minute. So it's always a good reminder. I think, Saad, I don't know if we want to go over a couple of other things, but I think one maybe useful thing to go over at this point would be objections. Because I get those a lot, and I'm sure you have as well, and Jason, you as well. And I think we could maybe get into that a bit. Sometimes an objection is made like out of discomfort with a cold call, and that's more of like a smoke screen. So I don't know if you want to talk about like objection versus smoke screen for everybody, and we can get into some.
How does that line into the framework, Jason?
Yeah, so
maybe that's skipping ahead.
So we have the intro. Here, let me know what you guys want to do, because we can continue with the cold call framework, because I think that preventing the objection is really, kind of the name of the game. And then we could talk about what to do when you get an objection if you want. What do you guys want to do? Because we could go in a totally different route with objections and spend some time on that, or we can continue with the framework. What do you guys want to do?
I want to understand from you, where do you think this will be valuable to take it forward?
Yeah. Sam, are you cool if we circle back to the objections? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Here, let me do this, because I think this part's really important. You're going to get a lot of objections at the beginning if you elevator pitch.
Yeah. That's where I thought of it next. But yeah, let's keep going.
So if we remove that elevator pitch and instead we replace this with what I call a priority drop, what we're doing here is we're basically going to drop a list of priorities, 2 or 3, that we think the prospect is likely focused on. So instead of talking about ourselves, we're going to talk about them. So this is interview tips. If anyone here listens to podcasts, or if you have a podcast, the key is actually not to ask the person a bunch of questions. The purpose of it is to talk about the other person and have the conversation be about the other person. You don't have to just ask question after question after question in order to do that. So this is a way that you can actually control the conversation and make it about the prospect. So you're going to be doing a little bit more talking in the intro. So that sounds something like, hey, Sam, Jason with Blissful Prospecting. Look, no, probably catch you in the middle of something, but you got a minute for me to tell you why I'm calling? And you can let me know if you want to keep chatting. We should also say that 9 times out of 10, you should get past that point. So if you're getting shut down more than once out of every 10 calls and the permission-based opener, you need to tweak it and do something a little different. Now that priority drop, we can use a lot of different examples. I'll use one where I have a client that sells an automated welding solution into VPs of manufacturing. So it's hardware as a service and software as a service. I'll say, so Sam says, yeah, hey, great. I'm hearing one of 2 things from VPs of manufacturing that we're talking right now. I'm really curious which is a bigger priority for you. One is around the labor market, and particularly the labor shortage of welders. I noticed that you guys have 3 ads open for welders right now, and people are just struggling to fill those positions. 2, the other thing I'm hearing is more of a focus around automation. So I'm assuming that because you guys are hiring welders, you have some automated welding solutions in-house, and it's a matter of, how do we put the right people on staff to program these things, get them running, and automate some of those, traditionally hard to automate parts. I'm curious which one of those 2 is a bigger focus for you right now. And what that allows me to do that's super important here is, before I get to this middle part of the call, it allows me to filter the conversation so that I can then question stack around problems that person is facing. So priority drop, I'm going to talk about you. And the way that I'm getting that language for the priority drop is I'm just thinking about, hey, if I'm an AE and I do discovery, I'm thinking about what are the big initiatives and goals that prospects bring to me that they're looking for our help with? What are those big initiatives? What are the things they need to accomplish this quarter, this year? And if you're a BDR, it's talk to your AE. What are people sharing? Watch the recordings of demos and discovery calls. But you do that, you make the conversation about the prospect, and that allows you to filter the conversation into that middle part. And I'll go ahead and pause, there. But that's the big part. You can prevent a lot of the objections at the front by just simply talking about the prospect instead of making a pitch of your solution.
That's a very interesting one, Jason. Tell me what your thoughts are on this. Do you think this could also help get prospects to meet you halfway in what you're trying to say, what you want to say? For example, Dooley is a new company. The CRM automation space is very new. So as much as I want to tell people what Dooley can do, I also want to educate them. But I just know I can't do so much on the call in that time. So Jason, tell me what your thoughts are on this. So this actually is what we use to open our call. So after the permission-based opener, the thing that we like to say, or what we're trying to say to people, is when we have 30, 40 seconds, I'm going with, hey, Jason, tell me this. So typically when I speak to sales leaders, they're either looking to solve for data, Salesforce hygiene issues due to data inaccuracy, or they're looking to ramp new reps faster, or they're looking to build better processes so they can essentially see why some deals are closing, some aren't. Does any of this resonate with you? I don't want to assume, but just want to see if you're going through any of this as well, so I can continue the conversation. And they'll either say A, B, or C, and that gives me an idea to take the conversation. And the next ask over here is I start making the conversation about them. And this is our hack. This is our trick. At Dooley, personally, we don't like to use product-centric discovery questions. But I do like to use this. Everybody that we speak with, I know they're using Salesforce. So my question to them is, now that you have a frame of reference and you've either told me A, B, or C, I'm going to go like, Jason, so tell me this, do you use Salesforce? You'll be like, yeah, I do. Okay, cool. Jason, tell me this, do you love it? Do you hate it? Or it could be better? Every single person says it could be better. And then I just simply go, okay, so what could be better about it?
It's not only that, it's a laugh and it could be better. Like that's also, and I think that question in itself seems to be a bit of a pattern disrupt, I find, with people. Like, do you love it or hate it? And they're like, well, like, do you really want to get into that? Because I have all day for that, is kind of the response that we usually get. So it's, it's those questions as well that are kind of unexpected. And again, are like likability questions. So
yeah. And depending on the persona, then we just start uncovering these 3 topics or the whatever they've given us through 3 layers of pain. So they'll highlight the business layer and then, or technical layer, that, hey, this is the problem. And I'll further get into, okay, how is that impacting your team? And now we're kind of going to the discovery part of it. But essentially what you just mentioned is like those 3 points that we're talking about, we're opening with, make it about your prospect, and just continue to dig into it and have a conversation around it.
Yeah. So just to kind of backtrack on the framework. So that's your priority drop, what we just talked about there. You're using that to filter the conversation, and then you question stack around those things. I have some suggestions that might help.
100%.
So I think the priority statement, what you want to talk about with the priority statement is the impact around either an outcome or a problem. So when I look at Salesforce Hygiene, let's say that, so you guys are typically calling on like a VP of sales, let's say?
Yeah. So I would say sales managers, sales directors, and VP of sales.
So sales, I know you guys know this, but for the people watching, the way you talk to a VP of sales is very different from a director of sales and a sales manager. Because a VP of sales is, Skip Miller wrote a really cool book called Selling Above and Below the Line. Essentially, the concept there is that above the line buyers, like a VP, they care more about strategy, outcomes, bigger business things, 6 months down the road, 12 months down the road, versus sales manager is going to be day to day. like, is our team making enough calls today, right? So with Salesforce Hygiene, if Salesforce Hygiene is not good, what is the impact of that? What problem does that create, or what does that not allow them to do?
So to our understanding, that could open up 3 doors, which is because they don't know what one great rep is doing. They don't know how to replicate that or how to use that data for other reps. So essentially, what is Jason doing? I want to be able to take 5, just basically the best things that Jason does in his deals and take that forward. But on a very basic level, if that data is not there, forget using Jason's data. What is Jason even doing? So the VP has no control because there's no sales hygiene. The VP of sales has no control over the strategy of what the reps are doing. If we think overall long-term.
Yeah. Okay. So strategy, and what is the bigger, like, let's do a couple whys on that.
Yeah.
So why is that important?
Yeah, well, the VP of sales has to be able to forecast. As a VP of sales, I need to know what's going to happen in the next 3 months, not what's going to happen tomorrow. I do not care if Jason hits 200% of quota last day of the month. I'd rather know where his 100% is coming from 2 months before that. VPs of sales do not care about heroes. They care about a process so they can go back to talk about and implement.
Yeah. And why is that important?
It's important because that's what I was hired for. That's why I was hired, to build a process, to gauge, to create the future of this company, to use what I've learned and to predict trends.
Yeah.
My job is not to pull heroes closing deals. My job is to predict trends, to understand what's going to happen with my business with Dooley at the end of the year. Michelle, see, I'm thinking about you right now. Michelle, sales, by the
way. Yeah. So what we did there is we kind of scaled up this Salesforce Hygiene.
Yeah.
What we did is we kind of said, Salesforce Hygiene, let's scale that up, and let's scale that up, and let's scale that up into stuff that's up here in the clouds that those executives will care about, right?
I love what you did.
So what you might say here, an example, you might say Salesforce Hygiene. So a lot of what I'm hearing from VPs is, how do we get our reps to just put accurate data into Salesforce so that I can forecast and have more predictable sales results and be able to look 3-6 months down the road and know that what I'm promising to our stakeholders is accurate. I'm just totally wing that, but you want to have that last little outcome or problem, that impact part of it. So ramp time. The second thing I'm hearing is ramp time. So how can we get our sales reps ramped faster so that we can hit our revenue target faster, or how speed to revenue is something that we hear a lot from sales leaders, right? So that what we're forecasting, we know that we can hit it in that amount of time. Or it might be a retention thing, whatever it might be. And then the accuracies, I feel like, is very related to the Salesforce Hygiene.
Yeah.
But I think if you scale it up to that bigger outcome, and this requires a lot of work in discovery too.
Yeah.
Michelle, in discovery, a lot of times,
that's where you win deals in discovery portion. I was writing down all these points right now because when we were talking earlier, there was a light bulb going on in my own head. So thank you for this. It's an activity for me as well, right?
Yeah. What's so important with discovery is that I think that people make a mistake of not using discovery to inform outbound. You can use what you learned in the sales motion to inform the outbound motion. Yeah. So what I want you to pay a close attention to, anyone here that's doing discovery, or if your AE is doing discovery, I really want you to push the prospect to tell you what it is that they're actually trying to accomplish. So if a VP of sales comes, I just use Dooley as an example, and they say, hey, we got to clean up our Salesforce Hygiene. That's not a good enough answer. Oh, I'm really curious. What will happen if you improve your Salesforce Hygiene? Oh, what initiative is this connected to? You got to find what's on the roadmap. Like if I had a whiteboard here, what are those 2 or 3 things that are on my whiteboard? I was talking to a CEO of a big software company a couple weeks ago. He had a freaking whiteboard with like 12 things on it. Yeah. And I was just curious, and I asked him, and these are like big things that he wants that company to do. I need to figure out how to connect my solution to those big things. So I got to figure out how to connect Salesforce Hygiene to that thing that is a 2022 priority. So you have to push prospects in discovery to give you that information. And when you do that enough times, you'll find that, oh, interesting, there are patterns here. There are specific things that all these VPs of sales want to accomplish, like 80-90% of them. You find these patterns amongst all of them.
You said something that's, oh, sorry, I don't know why I raised my hand.
Saad with his hand up so politely. That has never happened.
That was just by default. I didn't realize I raised my hand up, but okay. So this is, Put me in code, yeah. That was something was triggering in my brain when you were saying this. So we've been using a sequence, and in there's a message, and this sequence is specifically designed for enterprise companies. One of the email in the sequence is asking if this fits in with your 2022 plans. And the logic of that, I told my team, is for enterprise level companies, you're not going to call somebody and make a plan for Dooley. This has to fit in with what they're already thinking about, or how this currently aligns with something over there. If not, then you're not having this conversation for another year. You're not calling a $5 billion company and on the phone convincing them of a sale. People always think that selling and cold calling is about saying the most unique, creative thing and getting somebody to buy from you. Nah, you need to know your product, what you do, what you solve for, who you're calling, and if you're saying the right thing at the right time to get them hooked on.
Yep. How can I make this relevant for the person that I'm talking to? You know, so that research that you do, I do want to comment on what Elijah put in the chat. You know, he said the even deeper why could be, why is doing XYZ well in your role as a VP important to you? Why are you working there? What are your personal drivers? What are probably keeping you up at night? You kind of need that information though before the call. Because if I call you and say, hey, I talked to a lot of VPs of sales, I'm really curious, what are you focused on in 2022? It's like you don't sound like a peer.
Mhm.
You know, like you have to come in and be able to suggest some things that you hear and demonstrate business acumen. That's the biggest thing you have working against you.
Yeah.
Is that as a salesperson, prospects will look at you as a salesperson a person that is of lower status than them. That's just how it works. So you have to show them in that first 30 seconds and through this priority drop that, no, I'm actually a peer. I talk to a lot more people like you than you do. So I know more about you in this particular area, or I know more about this particular area than you do. So for me, when I come in and work with a company, I'm like, yeah, I don't care if the person's been a VP of sales for 30 years. I know more about outbound than you do because I work with companies like yours and I specialize in this specific thing. I've just seen this way more times than you have. So you got to bring that acumen into the call. You know way more about the specific thing that you help with than your prospects do, but you have to demonstrate that to them.
Yeah. Demonstrate value. And also that's how you become a consultant rather than a salesperson.
Exactly.
And that's rapport building and that's trust. That's your credibility right there. Saad always says that's the number one thing you say to us, Saad, is that we're not salespeople, we're advisors, we're consultants. And that's where you get your credibility. And I think that you need to reframe your own role as thinking of yourself as such.
Have confidence in yourself as well. I think that's also the biggest thing.
Yeah. I don't know why I wanted to do this as you were saying that, Sam, just like, yeah, fuck yeah, you know?
Yeah,
but,
I
no, totally
love
true.
my job. I love my job. I've become a consultant. So just a quick one on this. A lot of my friends are moving from investment banking into tech sales. Money, consultancy, whatever you want to call it, you're using your expertise. So when you're going up to people, we sell to sales leaders. We sell to people that are teaching their reps all strategies and tactics. I'm not going to go and master every new tactic that's coming up. I can't go and give my team a fish to eat every single day. But what if what you're doing, Jason, right now, we're talking framework. What if we learn how to fish?
Yep. So we bring up another really interesting concept too with, you know, problems. I think that people lead too much with problems that are below the responsibility of the person that they're talking to.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're using Dooley as an example, it's, you know, if you don't clarify that Salesforce Hygiene is impacting something that they care about, they're going to think, I have someone that actually handles Salesforce. Why don't you send an email over to me and I'll forward it to our Salesforce manager. So you get pushed down to the level of your acumen. So you have to really sharpen the language to what are the priorities of the people that I am talking to and reaching out to. And when you talk about problems, it's got to be bigger stuff. It's very strategic, you know, at that level. I think that's the hardest learning curve for most people when they get into enterprise, is that you're talking to someone that's so many layers removed from actually using this tool.
You're right.
A VP of sales at 1,000+ person company is not going to be using Dooley. Their team is going to be using Dooley.
You're totally right. We go through this every day.
Yeah. So it's just, I want to clarify, we can talk about cold calling. I'm glad you brought that up. So we can talk about cold calling tactics all day long, But the message is what drives the soft skill. Like I look at outbound as an equation, and it's, volume times quality. You know, people talk a lot about the volume part of it, but the quality part is really prospect fit,
Mhm.
message, and then your soft skills. You can be the best cold caller in the entire world, but if you have a shitty message, it's just not going to resonate with the person. And if you're
You know
talking
what?
to the wrong person, that doesn't matter either, obviously, but like the message part is so, so important.
You know what's funny over here? There was a time when making 80 or 100 dials a day made you a hero. There's parallel dialers now.
Yeah.
I used to make 100 dials a day. If I tell somebody now, the question they ask, how long does it take you? And I said a full day. Be
Yeah.
like, bro, I'm making 50 in an hour. Like, sorry, 20 minutes using a parallel dialer. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
And I just shut up with egg on my face, and then I walk away.
So do we want to help anyone in the chat here? Nick's got a good question related to what we've just been talking about. How do you
There's
connect
a
these
lot
VPs
of
to the work their employees are doing? I sell to IT and they're so far removed, it's difficult to connect. So I think, Nick, you got to think about if you're doing full cycle sales and you sell to these VPs, a question that you can ask in your discovery call is, hey, Saad, so as you're doing your upfront contract, Sandler style in your discovery, hey, before we dig in, I'm really curious because I imagine you get a dozen different priorities for the year. But what are the top 2 or 3 things that you're working on right now that you feel are going to be most relevant to our conversation today? I want to make sure that this time is well spent for you. And then write down word for word or record the call exactly what they say in the language that they say it. You do that 10 times, and I'm telling you, you're going to find a pattern in what people say. And then that right there, that's what you put into your cold call intro. That's what you put in the language of your email, all of that stuff. Like the language is there for you in these conversations. You just got to pull it out.
I have a
So
dually
that's would be
example.
my advice.
I have a dually example on this as well, Jason, which is lines in with
Sure.
something you've shared as well. So when I came, we were purely PLG, purely inbound, purely product led. But then we realized that to make PLG work, we need outbound, and to make outbound more powerful, we need PLG. So we sell
Yeah.
to VPs of sales. So this is what I've learned since I've come to Dooley. People always use the word champions, but there's actually deal influencers now as well. So champion is somebody, to me at least, in the PLG space, somebody that will use Dooley, a director of sales, somebody that will oversee all the people using Dooley. The VP of sales is my champion. That director now is my influencer because they are in and around this deal. They're not going to put the credit card in. My champion is the VP of sales. But guess what? The VP of sales has no idea what the reps are doing with Dooley or if they're even using it. So if I give them a cold call and tell them this, they'll be disconnected from it, versus creating a pathway where you open up with them their priorities, but at the same time you're swelling up the company, you're going to rep level, you're asking the reps, you're doing discovery on the reps, understanding what problems they're facing. So by the time you come up to the VP of sales, you're not coming up with ideas, you're coming up with a solution based on what you've uncovered. This is our exact sales motion here at Dooley. Our end user is a director of sales, is a manager, is a rep, but I can't go to the VP till I haven't found out what's happening on a rep level.
Yep. Well, and you sound super educated. That's really what's necessary with enterprise, prospecting.
Yeah.
Right. Is for you to come in and have a story.
Yeah.
Where you've already said, hey, I've talked to dozens of people on your team, and here's this thing that's happening, and here's what we think the impact of that is.
Yeah.
And I did some research on you guys, and it looks like you're growing a lot. You're hiring a lot of people right now. And one thing I imagine is that you want to shorten ramp times and you want more predictability in how you forecast.
Yeah.
Here's how we think this problem that we found is impacting that. You're able to tell a better story.
Jason, this is an important question. We're in Q&A, so let's just go through these, but somebody just dropped this. Hey, I am new to sales as a new BDR. What advice do you have for me?
I think inundate yourself with the prospect. Like I would be doing everything that I can to figure out who these prospects are and all of that kind of stuff. So there's a few really tactical things that I would do. One, any calls that you can listen to an AE selling to these people, those are going to be gold. So any gong recordings, chorus, wingman, whatever you're using for conversational intelligence, that is the number one thing that I would do. Then I would talk to your AE or AEs, any of those types of folks. The other thing too that I see is really underrated is case studies and content. So I talked to so many reps, you guys, where they've never even looked at their own case studies. They aren't able to tell stories of their own customers. A lot of the language there is going to be in your case studies and your company's content. You can also look at competitor
Yes.
content and case studies. So if your company doesn't have really great content, someone in your space does. That's another really good hack that you could use depending on who you sell to. Job descriptions of that title in that industry are a really good one. And if you sell software, I'd look at review sites. So G2.com, Trust Radius, any of those, like look at the reviews that people leave. And G2 is pretty cool because you can filter the reviews by seniority and industry.
Yeah.
And company size. So you could look at what do people say about Dooley? And what do sales leaders above a certain amount of company size say about Dooley? What do they say about your competitors? Which I don't know if you guys really have any direct competitors necessarily, but what do they say about your competitors? So those are like the first 4 or 5 things that I would do is I would get on the same page with that. This is literally what I do with a new client. And I just create a Google Doc and I pull out little snippets of customer language. I want to start talking in the language of my customers. It's no different than, I just started learning how to snowboard. There's certain terminology and things that people say when you go snowboarding, like you're just getting ingrained into this culture. So those are the very first things that I would do.
Somebody said this to me last week. You're not going to start writing till you haven't read. Like if you're a new BDR, understand the industry. Look, I have a big problem with people who are trying to half-ass everything, who are trying to half-ass a cold call, half-ass a cold email. Just because sales has a lot of money does not mean you go half-ass do your job. Go maximize your learning on the industry. Go sound like a proper consultant, not just a salesperson. Sales, you're okay to say and us. I do it all the time. Don't read into that. Like, say whatever you want to say, but just sound like you know what you're talking about. So one question really got me fired up over here, Jason, if it's okay for me to read it.
Yeah.
This person says, starting my first sales job, outbound SDR next week. What should I ask my manager for? I want to hit the ground running and crush those quotas ASAP. I'm going to tell you something that nobody tells you. Ask for closed loss reports.
Yeah.
Ask for closed loss reports. Instead of doing something hard or just restarting from scratch, think about all the learnings you've been given in your ramp time. A closed loss report is an easy way for you to connect the dot with what you're selling. One of my friends, she started at a company 2 weeks ago, and she has quota in her first month. I'm not going to name drop her. She's also at a big company. But I asked her, I'm like, why are you struggling? She's like, all the accounts have been touched because they're a big company. Everything is all over the place. I'm like, go find closed loss reports so you can get a taste of fresh blood early. That's what makes good salespeople. Early wins, fresh blood. She got 3 meetings booked on a Monday. So do that. The last bit of that, you want to hit the ground running, start writing. Start writing on LinkedIn. Document your learnings, document your experiences. It's going to do one of 2 things. It's going to make your copywriting better. It's a job description this year. It feels like it's a job description this year that great sellers have to be great writers. The other thing that it's going to do is that it's going to expose you to the industry you're in and the people you're working with, and you never know the benefit of that.
Love it.
Any thoughts, Jason?
Close lost reports, it's money.
Yeah.
A lot of times companies conduct interviews with people too, so one of my clients has a whole, like they hired a company to interview a bunch of closed loss deals, and they just go back through and ask people, hey, before you even reached out to us or thought about taking that first meeting, what business outcome were you hoping to get help with? What problem were you having? Like, dude, that's outbound language right there, Yeah.
Jason, I'm
Retrace
writing
past
that down.
success.
I'm literally writing that down right now because I'm inspired to go hit my closed loss again with that exact messaging. It's fantastic.
I was typing out some of the things you were saying earlier as well. I'm like, this is good.
Everybody go hit your closed loss after this. That's one of the big takeaways.
All right, let's go through some more questions. So there's another one. How effective is texting and is it proper?
I don't do this from an outbound standpoint. I think once the sales process has started, or if you've had a conversation with someone, it's appropriate to text, but I don't think that you're legally allowed to actually text people cold.
Yeah.
in a marketing campaign. I don't think you're actually allowed to do that. I could be off on that, but I think texting is appropriate once you've made contact. So if someone's
Um,
picked up the phone, you've talked to them or replied to an email, something like that, where you can reference something, I
yeah,
think it's cool to use a text.
I'm with you. It's like texting and gifting. Don't use it to open the door, but use it to keep the door open.
Yep.
I don't want to bribe somebody to take a meeting with me, nor also
Yeah.
please do not make cold FaceTimes as well. I know there was a big conversation about cold FaceTimes. Just don't. No cold FaceTimes, no cold text. After you've made friends with somebody, level 1, level 2, level 3, go all out. Just don't open with it.
Yeah.
What else? What else? Okay, when someone doesn't have a lot of information on LinkedIn for their role and perhaps an arbitrary title that might be relevant, should I engage or move on to someone that puts more data on their profile? So this means,
This is a
yeah,
great question.
yeah,
We only have a minute left, so I'll answer this real quick.
Please.
So for personalization, I want to think in 3 buckets. So these are value buckets. So education, I want to think accomplishments, and then investments. So education is, what does this person or company educate their customers about? Investments, what do they spend money on? That's hiring, merger and acquisitions, new products, new services, etc. And then accomplishments, what do they brag about? You don't have to, like, the person's LinkedIn profile is one of many places where you can find that information. And depending on what industry you sell into, most people will not have a filled out LinkedIn profile. So their website, if you put the URL of the website, here, I'll share one more thing real quick. If you put the URL of the website like this, and then put a colon behind it, like I did in the chat, you can actually put a search term in there, and you can run a Google search in the person's website. So if you use the URL, put a colon behind it, you can type in hiring, careers page, whatever it is, and it'll literally pull out a Google result that takes you right to that place. Like, you need to get good at finding stuff on Google.
Yeah. Okay, friends, we are at time. I will say this, it was a lot of fun for me. Jason, thank you.
Yeah.
Honestly, I feel like it was a little chaotic, but that's what we wanted it to be. Yeah, here we are.
I like chaos.
Yeah, I do too, man. That's what we're in sales. But I appreciate everybody coming on. Jason, thank you for your time. Honestly, learned a lot. Going to take some of this onto our prospecting. Also, if anybody's ever interested in learning more about Jason, check out blissfulprospecting.com. And if you're interested in learning about Dooley and how I'm getting my BDRs to close deals and have those closed loss reports and all that stuff built and ready to go, check out Dooley. Hit up Sam or myself, and we'll take it from there.
Cool. Thanks, you too. Had fun
Thanks, everyone.
jamming.
Thanks.
Take care.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye.
Have a good
Thank
one, everyone.
you.
See ya.
Bye.